Monsieur le Président de la Chambre des représentants, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Madame la Commissaire, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadrices et ambassadeurs, Madame, Monsieur les co-présidents,
co-chairs of the International Fund for Public Interest Media, chair of the Forum for Information and Democracy, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the very first conference on integrity, so information integrity and independent media. I am particularly happy to have this conference during this forum in this very framework. During this very event, we created the International Fund for Public Interest Media. I would like to thank the co-chair, Maria Ressa, Mark Thompson, for how much they've worked throughout the years and months to make it possible for us to be here today. Dear friends, without further ado, let's open the discussion. Maria Ressa, you are the co-chair of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. You're the CEO of Rappler and Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2021 for your commitment in favor of freedom of expression. Maria, you have the floor.
France for hosting this conference and the International Fund. Thank you to the governments which are gathered here today, especially Ghana and Moldova, whose heads of state literally traveled just for this and established the forum, the fund, 2 years ago at this forum. Of course, thank you to the Paris Peace Forum and the Forum for Information and Democracy. 2 years ago, when we attended this forum, thank you for referencing that, the integrity of our global information system was already under attack. Since then, how is it possible? Things have gotten significantly worse. Manipulation of information ecosystems by autocrats through propaganda, information operations, media capture is more widespread and effective than ever as AI and digital platforms are weaponized. AI platforms themselves have become vectors of lies. The innovation race has completely eclipsed accuracy and trust. Big tech goes unregulated, treating us like Pavlov's dogs in a grand experiment of behavior modification. We see this in data on LLM bias and hallucinations. I call them errors, especially in low-resource languages of the Global South. Meanwhile, independent journalism faces existential economic stress. AI is reducing traffic to news sites all around the world more than social media ever did. As I said at the UN General Assembly last month, and it's great to see some of the faces again today, we are living through an information Armageddon. Our shared reality is collapsing. According to VDEM, 72% of the world is now under authoritarian rule. The pattern is clear for every democratic leader, right? Information integrity, discerning fact and fiction is the mother of all battles. Lose this, and we lose everything. Without a shared reality, we cannot solve existential problems this forum addresses. We cannot have electoral integrity. We can't have journalism. We can't have democracy. We lose it all. But today, despite our weight, because that's good security, among this group of our committed partners, I am hopeful. Even Mark is really hopeful. This room represents growing global consensus and willingness to act by partners from the North and the South. We're seeing a new model of multilateralism emerging with resources and ideas, right? We in the Global South are very familiar with the democratic struggles you in the Global North are just going through now. We must act now and decisively. In 2023, the International Fund, which we co-chaired together, was officially established here. We've been proud of the progress we've achieved as a true North-South coalition, and let me tell you what we've accomplished. 93% of our grantees reported major improvements in financial sustainability. 88% increased their audiences. These advances enabled extraordinary impact, informing voters in pivotal elections in Moldova, you will hear from Moldova, and Georgia, despite what's happening there, more than 330 days, right, of sustained protests. We sustained vital local reporting of the war in Palestine and building resilience to disinformation across the Sahel. We're also working at the market level, promoting access to trustworthy information on AI platforms and advancing solutions against the unchecked power of big tech. But we can do more with your help. Many independent news organizations will not survive 2026 without your action now. This is not exaggeration, it's economic reality. The International Fund proved its model in phase 1. We're now scaling up, aiming to raise $150 million over 3 years. This conference marks that significant milestone. Our values themselves are under attack. We all feel it. The forces we face, whether it's Putin, Zuckerberg, or Musk, are powerful and relentless. Acting bilaterally will not be as effective as acting together. The fund demonstrates that a more multilateral, collective, strategic response is possible. Win information integrity, and we can win the rest. We now have a chance to act collectively and decisively in a world on fire. Join us and help define what effective multilateral collaboration means today. Thank you. Thank you to so many familiar faces around the table. From me and Mark.
Thank you very much, Maria. Merci, Maria. Monsieur le Président du Forum.
Thank you, Maria. Chair of the Forum on Information and Democracy and Secretary General of Reporters Without Borders, please, you have the floor. Thank you, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are facing an emergency in the information space. We need to become experts in solutions. Experts in solutions more than experts in problems. Experts in problems will always know how to explain how bad the situation is, how severe it is. But I think we need to identify solutions that are concrete, pragmatic, and that make us make progress. And this is what we established in 2018. We knew that we needed more democracy in our informational space. We owe this to my predecessor, someone who's not with us anymore, Christophe Deloire, who passed away in 2024. Reporters Without Borders and this forum think that we need solutions, that we need civil society to feed our work, and we know that the integrity of information is now in danger. When there is a fund to regulate space, it helps us, because when there's no journalism, then we can't protect information. We can't make sure that we treat all players the same way, in a fair manner. And I think this is one of the treasures of democracy, one of the conditions of democracy. We need our society to remain governable. One of the solutions to all these issues is journalism. It's a model that we need to defend and advocate for, and I commend France and the coalition of states. This coalition is very important, and we are again advocating for this coalition today. Freedom of press is not just the freedom of expression of journalists. Freedom of press is not just the zoo of repressive and autocratic regimes. It's not just free speech. It's not just all of that put together. It's not only the security of journalism, it is a capacity to act, to serve people. And I think this is a strong vision, something that we need to be reminded of. I think freedom of speech, or rather freedom of press, requires help and support. We need to be very careful not to think that we really need to send all subsidies and support journalism where the market has failed. We need to be just and fair in these subsidies, in this support. This is one of the ambitions of the GTI, the ISO norm of journalism developed by Reporters Without Borders and its partners. And this is what we're trying to achieve with independent media outlets. We need to keep our capacity for public debate centered on journalism, centered on facts. This forum will keep on developing and fighting our fights. I would like to commend the work of the teams that have been working hard to make this possible today. The campaign that we have led to talk about media economics started with Reporters Without Borders on the 3rd of May, and we said that there were significant threats on freedom of press, and this forum has helped with its work. We have issued notes on technological platforms. We've also published the eye-level panel's work. And today, we can announce the creation of a consultation group for states, amongst other initiatives. And today, sometimes we feel like the ground is eroding under journalists, but there are opportunities at political level as well. This can help freedom of press, giving the right to people to viable and reliable information. I come back from Senegal, I come back as well from Brazil, I've been there, and I realize that this is a question that everyone is wondering about, and I think this is something that we need to really engage with. Support to media, support to public media, working for the public interest is something that will help and serve democracy and the future of democracies. Thank you. Thank you very much, Thibault Brutin. And I would like now to give the floor to Achille Mbembe, historian, politologist, and philosopher, a professor at the University of Witwatersrand. You're also head of the Foundation for Information and Democracy. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. I would like to thank the previous speakers, Maria and Thibault. And I would like to thank, of course, the International Fund for Public Interest Media and the Forum for Information and Democracy for organizing this very important conference. The topic we are dealing with this afternoon is of particular relevance, I would say, for both the rule of law and democracy, in particular on the African continent. And this for at least 4 reasons I would like to mention briefly. The first is that, Mr. Minister, nowhere today is the need for access to factual, locally relevant data more sharper than on the African continent. And to a large extent, our continent remains a media desert in more than one instance. The second reason is that the continent is both the oldest and the youngest in our world, with great potential, but it's stymied, as we all know, by a lack of economic growth, structural impediments to democracy. The youth here is both a promise, but it's also a ticking bomb. We see it everywhere with the Gen Z in Madagascar. We see it happening in places such as Morocco and elsewhere. Many are enraged, they are angry and disillusioned, and a number of them do not see any reason to stay where they are. And we have to make sure that they inhabit precisely this continent, which once again is the oldest and the youngest in the world. Thirdly, Mr. Minister, the democracy, as we all know, is being actually discredited in many ways, not least by campaigns of disinformation and propaganda that polarize and destabilize society, often exacerbating political and economic divisions. And studies show, in fact, that disinformation campaigns in Africa have surged nearly 4 times since 2022. And as, let's say, these other academics and researchers have pointed out, there also remains a huge informational divide, which excludes many young people, especially women and the poor. This makes societies even more vulnerable both to disinformation and to what we could call information pollution. Yet Africans' young people embody an incredible promise, as we can see when we visit the continent, a vital force for good. And we are seeing signs of this today across the continent as they mobilize for change and continuing to support this aspiration for change is a task we have to embrace wholeheartedly. In that sense, and I will end here, it seems to me that the benefits of journalism, election participation, good governance, sustainable development, all of these in sectors ranging from health to food security, all of this is absolutely fundamental, and it has been well documented. Evidence is now also growing that access to journalism builds resilience to disinformation and helps address social distrust and polarization. So what is clear is the challenge to our global information systems. It requires action that is urgent and collective, at least in 4 areas, in addition to what Thibault has mentioned. The area of transparency and research, we need to invest intellectually in a renewed cycle of research in order to achieve the goal of transparency. We need to pay serious attention to anything that has to do with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence in an age characterized by engagement-driven algorithms, by bots, and emerging disinformation for hire sector, which is financialized. All of this makes it such that it's an area we have to think about very clearly. We also need to pay attention to everything that has to do with societal trust and resilience, and the place of civil society precisely in upholding the critical faculties without which our societies will be very vulnerable to disinformation. Such are the remarks I wanted to share. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, professeur. Merci à tous les 3.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you to all 3 of you. Now, I would like to say a few words about the reasons why this forum today gives so much space to this conference and its very topic, and why the President decided to make it that way. Today, democracy is endangered, and I would say it is under a death threat because there are enemies from the outside and enemies from the inside, and consent to democracy is decreasing in the north and the south. And for several of us, and for most participants here, this is quite relevant. So we could say that there are threats from the outside, threats from the inside, targeting democracy. And we can act as spectators, or we can be actors of the protection of the common good, this common good that we so want to protect. But there are reasons why we are here today. First, for a very long time, I believe, we have thought that democracy relies on only one pillar. One man or one woman has one vote, one voice. But there are two pillars to democracy: voting, and everyone is allowed to vote. But people need to be informed and be able to make choices. If these choices are not informed, then why give them the right to vote? Because it makes it hard for them to use this right as citizens. We have forgotten about the importance of this pillar. And public debate, with us as witnesses, has changed and has started to be moved to big platforms, platforms that are handled by Chinese or American billionaires. And that has had major consequences on the quality of public debate itself. The first consequence is the fact that we are now working in algorithmic bubbles, which hinders the capacities of people to talk about their issues and discuss them and debate. Second, these spaces have become the very space where people spend a lot of time and intellectual activity, and journalists have been deprived, little by little, of the resources they need to work. And that has been said. It's harder for them now to carry out their mission, which is to inform the choices of citizens. And now we are witnessing more fragmentation. Fragmentation that is being instrumentalized by those who use disinformation as a virus in public debate. And these people know that they can put an end to democracy using this virus. So I would like to say a word about the virus of disinformation. It is a collective issue and a democratic issue. It is a virus that is spreading in democracies and prevents them from working the way they should. To fight this virus, we need to take an approach that resembles the way we would treat a medical virus, a literal virus. We need to detect it first. And this is why we need pluralistic press, independent media that can detect disinformation and its techniques that are used to weaken democracy. And this is one of the topics we're here to discuss today. Now, public decision makers can also use resources to try and detect disinformation. But policymakers are the ones who need to decide what's right, what's wrong, what's fake or true. But they need to be able to realize that some behaviors are unauthentic. And this is what we decided to do in 2018. We created Viginum, which is an interministerial mechanism. And the idea behind it is not to be able to detect what's fake on social media, but to detect foreign interference, unauthentic ones, that are trying to weaken democracy from the outside and from the inside. We need to protect information, and that needs to be done by independent media and with more than one media outlets. Now, after the detection of the virus comes the treatment of the virus. We need to be able to find who the players are, who are those who want to attack democracy through disinformation. And in some countries, regimes to counter these players have been implemented, especially in the EU. And on a national level, I have pushed for a law for more security in digital spaces, in which we have integrated a mechanism to fight deepfakes. In our legislation, we used to have a number of items covered, but not deepfakes, which is another kind of information manipulation. So we need these campaigns, we need the law in this treatment, but we also need to fix the rules of huge platforms and social media, because in a way they have become our public spaces. And this is why France has advocated at EU level for more rules. And the DSA, the Digital Services Act, came out of this work. The EU now has tools, but sometimes these sovereign and legal tools actually aren't complied with. Article 28 on the protection of minors online says that platform owners need to set up measures to protect minors. Do you think, dear friends, that platform owners and social media do comply with this regulation? No, they don't. Article 35 in the DSA, platform and services suppliers need to mitigate the risks in a proportionate way to the systemic attacks, and they need to protect us from any violation of fundamental rights and violation of democratic principles. And the same goes for violence and public health. Again, this is part of the European legislation, and I don't think any platform owner complies with this legislation. Platform owners and digital services suppliers need to provide the EU Commission data to make sure that they do comply with this regulation. Do you really think that access is given to data to researchers to see if they do comply with this regulation? I don't think so. Again, the answer is no. So Article 51 of this Act actually gives us the answer to what we should do. A fine, sanctions. Sanctions exist with huge fines, with other types of sanctions that can apply as well. And I think either the EU Commission needs to investigate for 2 years platform owners, or they need to give back EU member states the capacity and the possibility to fine and take action on their own. And I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the President, but I do believe he agrees with me, we need, based on the principle of precaution, to restrict access to young people to social media before they've done the work, before they've really done the work to grow up and realize what the danger of these platforms can be. This is an important age, an age at which they're growing. So this is very important. Now we've talked about detection, treatment, and we've also talked about, and we need to talk about antibodies as well. And I think the antibodies go through all the programs that we've implemented for school children when they need to work and when they need to start using social platform, we need to prepare them.
And I'm only too happy that the works carried out by RSF be brought on board by Microsoft in their search engines so as to value them and value reliable information. So moving on now, let's see what we can do today together with two elements that I wanted to share with you. First of all, our collective support provided to the International Fund for Public Media, because the action carried out by said fund has proved to be very effective. And the 62 million euro that were invested allowed 130 media in many countries to resist fake news and the threat and push of fake news in the Ukraine, Moldavia, and other countries tried to wield influence on sovereign countries, manipulate elections, and do as they could in Romania, and lead to the cancelling of the elections. So we need another 100 million euros, and the President of the French Republic will say so later on, and will join the consultative committee with other 4 countries, Brazil, Chile, Portugal, and Luxembourg, which I would like to thank for their participation. I'm talking about the international fund that we need to support. Then there's this coalition of nations that is committed to base themselves on a public declaration that we're adopting collectively, reminding us of a few simple principles. 1, the importance of having reliable information, pluralistic and independent as a public good, the need to provide public support to it, threats to the integrity of information which are a threat to national security and collective national security, the importance of coalitions and multilateral agreements, and the importance of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. So I would like to thank the 28 countries who already joined the coalition, i.e. Albania, Armenia, and I would like to pay tribute to its Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Australia, Brazil, Chile, Croatia, Denmark, Estonia, France, Ghana. To my right, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Greece, Latvia, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, represented by its ministers, Moldavia, Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Sierra Leone, Spain, Switzerland, Ukraine, the UK, Uruguay, and Bulgaria. Now, I hope that by the end of the meeting we will have reaped a new signature, so we get to see a coalition of 30 countries. We do need to, and let me tell you that the virus of fake news is jeopardizing the existence, the mere existence of democracy, and it's our responsibility and our obligation towards the future generation to pave the way in order to reap the full benefits of democracy, and we owe it to the future generations and to ourselves. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Minister. My name is Nishant Lalwani, and I'm the CEO of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. I'll be moderating the ministerial and ambassadorial roundtable, we'll get started without further delay. We are expecting a number of heads of states to arrive in about 40 minutes. And so I ask you that you keep your remarks, ministers, to 3 minutes. And I'll provide a new timeline once the ministers have spoken. And please, if you can, stick to that timing. I'd like to start by giving the floor to Minister Ablakwa, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana.
Well, thank you very much. Ghana would like to commend the organizers for this very timely and significant forum, and I want to thank my colleague, the Foreign Minister of France, for the excellent hosting so far. I share the views of the Foreign Minister who just spoke before me, that we are currently living in a world of misinformation pandemic. That is really what the reality is, and we have to call it what it is and acknowledge that. And we have to also be honest around this table that it is not only being carried out by authoritarian regimes Let's be honest about that. It is now becoming a new normal, even in the various political campaigns that we wage. How many political parties in fully fledged democracies do not have troll farms, do not have surrogates who are specializing in misinformation and disinformation to manipulate the voting public towards a certain outcome? So we have to be very honest in this discussion that the threat we face, this pandemic, is not only being perpetrated by authoritarian regimes, which we have to condemn, but even in democracies, well-advanced democracies, it is going on. And it is also important that we come to this discussion with the grim reality that we face. The professional journalists who we depend on to provide credible, trustworthy, reliable information are under attack. We know last year was the worst year for journalists, 124 of them killed. This year, 79 have been killed already, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, and the numbers continue to rise. We need to stand up for journalists who are under attack, who are being killed. We have to speak out for them, and we must discuss mechanisms to protect them. We must also discuss at this meeting how we ensure that we put in place systems that will enhance the literacy levels of our populace. How do we ensure that there can be real-time fact-checking? How can we empower citizens so that whether in authoritarian or democratic regimes, they do not fall victim to this misinformation pandemic? So AI is a double-edged sword, as the conveyors of misinformation and disinformation are using that. We should also put in place mechanisms that in real time can neutralize that threat, right from our educational system and right from the public interest media space. Then the other suggestion Ghana wants to make is the need to overhaul our political campaigns, because really that's where it starts. And in the process, we elect leaders who become the conveyors of misinformation and disinformation. Now we hear leaders boldly at international platforms even claim that climate change is a hoax. We hear boldly leaders on international platforms say that reparation, for example, for the transatlantic slave trade is not justified and that it never happened. And those of us in the global south, in Africa, feel so offended when we hear stuff like that. But it's being accepted and it's being allowed. I mean, look at the genocide that happened recently in the Middle East. A lot of traditional, conventional media called it war in Gaza. Really, war? The helpless, hapless, unarmed women and children were at war with who? Where were their weapons? We fail to call it what it should be called. So we need to really put in place systems that deal with the entire spectrum, right from the subtle, the propaganda, all the way to the outright misinformation and disinformation that takes place. Ghana also would want to bring to bear the economic consequences of this misinformation and disinformation. It raises the cost of capital. Africa currently has an annual infrastructure deficit of about $130 to $170 billion. When misinformation and disinformation continues about how risky it is to invest in Africa, investors shy away, and what it means is that poverty increases, and what it means is that thousands of young people from the world's youngest continent will want to migrate, no matter how risky it is, to Europe. And then we have the immigration crisis here, which started from the misinformation and disinformation, which affects the capital markets because sovereign credit rating agencies are saying that it is too risky, largely based on data which is unverified, which is not reliable. And finally, it is also important for us in this meeting to recognize that we are losing children, we are losing many, many citizens of this world because of the public health implications. There was a recent report in our country about how misinformation and disinformation, which is driven by profit, because in this discussion, we must also call out the capitalists who don't care once money will be made. So fake drugs, fake, efficacies are claimed, and it's leading to conspiracy theories. Children are not being vaccinated, and pregnant women are staying from the right medications, and people are dying en masse. So this has also led to a public health crisis. So I think that if we put all the issues in this proper context, we will appreciate the urgency and how all of us have a role to play in formulating the right policies, carrying out the right interventions, calling out what has to be called out in very clear terms. And I'm glad that later today my president will be here to make some significant announcements about Ghana's contribution to this pandemic, which all of us must be committed to addressing. And I want to salute everybody here for giving this topic time and resources and convening so we can find a solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'd now like to pass the floor to Minister Mirzoyan, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia.
Thank you. Dear ministers, dear colleagues, first of all, I want to thank Minister Pavlov for the invitation to this timely discussion. We are meeting at a critical time when access to reliable information and independent media plays a crucial role in advancing democratic ideals, yet at the same time, digital technologies and artificial intelligence are being instrumentalized for large-scale fake news and disinformation campaigns, for targeting individuals and societies, inciting hate and violence, for facilitating human rights violations. Of course, like any other democracy these days, Armenia is also facing a huge wave of hybrid threats, including disinformation, manipulation, and foreign interferences. These are not random acts of disruption. These are targeted, systematic, hostile campaigns designed to achieve specific goals, including undermining our sovereignty and trust in democratic institutions, and sabotaging the aspirations for cooperation and like-minded partnerships. Confronting these challenges has become a daily activity. There comes the dilemma and the delicate line between upholding the freedom of expression, pluralistic media from one side, and from the other side, the decisiveness to confront the malign actors aiming to misuse the freedom and undermine the trust in the society, our democracy itself. We do recognize that those efforts will only increase as Armenia is heading towards parliamentary elections next year. So what is the key in this situation? The democracy itself, I believe. To protect the democracy in Armenia, we should rely on democracy itself and the mechanisms it provides. We can just look back to our own history, to the political crisis and elections in 2021 as a vivid example of what I said. Of course, we cannot overcome this challenge alone. We have built and are working continuously towards enhanced like-minded partnerships which contribute to Armenia's resilience. This includes the deepening of our multi-layered partnerships with the European Union, strategic engagement with France, among other EU countries, and partners who have established strong democratic institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the latest 2025 Index of Reporters Without Borders, Armenia improved its position again, moving up 9 points in the country ranking from 43rd to 34th among 180. Recognizing the importance of healthy information ecosystems in every part of the world, Armenia is also taking a leadership role in the Partnership for Information and Democracy by joining the newly established Consultative Committee of States of the Partnership, which builds upon our past collaboration. In the same logic, we are also joining the International Fund for Public Interest Media. So concluding, I want to once again state that Armenia endorses the Paris Declaration on Multilateral Action for Information Integrity and Independent Media. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for your commitment to both the initiatives here. I'd like to next introduce Minister Braje, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. And just a reminder that there's clocks in front of us for your 3-minute slot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Jean-Noel, thanks for the invite, and thank you for organizing. Maria Ressa, good to see you again. And we are honored to endorse the declaration, the Paris Declaration on Multilateral Action for Information Integrity and Independent Media. And indeed, in current geopolitical environment, independent, pluralistic media is part and parcel of the critical infrastructure of our countries. And it is essential to govern, it is essential to prepare and overcome crises, it is essential to conduct reforms. And so it's Latvia was one of the countries which contributed to the cyber rapid response team during Moldova's September elections, because again, having that critical infrastructure in place is crucially important. We also provided training to help strengthen Moldova's cybersecurity and Stratcom capabilities, and we supported projects on strengthening social resilience both in Moldova but also in Ukraine, Georgia, and we have trained quite a number of media professionals from those countries in Latvia and are ready to continue providing that training. We have also provided emergency support to Ukrainian media and journalists, and again, I'm not going to mention details because we protect people, but we'll continue doing that. The issue that worries us greatly is the information integrity and protection of it in this age of AI. So from one hand, we are studying various methods that are used. We have established an AI lab within the Center of Stratcom Excellence that we have in Latvia. But we are also trying with countries of similar assessments, whether in the EU or NATO, to find the best answers to it. So One is indeed building on the technological capabilities that we have in our countries, because of course the use of AI to discover the hostile algorithms, campaigns, and so on and so forth is actually possible, and there are successful examples. Second is investing in our own AI capability. So the first European language open source large language model is Latvian. It's a company Tilde, and it trains the needs of smaller languages in various areas. So actually having that capability is important, because there is, for a fact, proven but it's run by journalists, and it allocates funding independently from the government for longer-term research programs and projects, which are then published in prime-time media or placed online. And plus, there is a specific support also for regional media, because they are the ones suffering the most, at least in European countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. De Ruwe, President of the House of Representatives of Belgium.
Thank you very much, esteemed Excellencies, dear colleagues. It's an honor to address you here on behalf of the Belgian Federal House of Representatives. Although I'm the president of that institution, I will speak in my own name. Those among you with good eyes might have noticed that I'm not longer 25 years old. Over the course of my life, which is a long period, I have seen the way we gather news and information changed beyond recognition. It is hard for young people to believe that there was a time when internet didn't exist, let alone artificial intelligence. Today, the speed and the sheer volume with which we consume news or fake news has increased dramatically. Like most things in life, it comes with both advantages and drawbacks. If you allow me to express a fear that has to be raised here today, I think. Étant donné que je ne dispose que quelques minutes,
and because I only have a few minutes, I would like to underline the following. It is important that we make sure that the way we fight fake news, the ambition of public authorities to fight fake news is understandable in these difficult times and uncertain times. But as political decision makers, we need to be very cautious. Let me remind you all that not so long ago, saying that the Earth went around the sun was considered a fake news and declared as such by the existing authorities. So very often us politicians, we are supposed to be responsible for fake news. So yes, hatred and fake news or misinformation need to be fought against. But this is mostly the responsibility of civil society, teachers, lecturers, academics, scientifics, journalists, etc. Two categories, I think, should be more tricky decision makers. I think lawmakers and governments, maybe not. We don't need to have a ministry of truth, because nobody holds the absolute truth, and it's certainly not up to the state to decide what is true and what is fake. We as politicians need to be very humble. So doubt is the epitome of the freedom of expression. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I'd like to hand the floor now to Minister Bar. Minister of Information and Civic Education of Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, friends. We are, as Sierra Leone, very honored to be part of this conversation and very proud to reaffirm our support for the Paris Declaration and our support for a free and independent press. Those of you who are familiar with my country will know that if any country truly understands the impact of this conversation, the intersection of chaos, being in a troublesome neighborhood, health crisis, but that country seeking democracy and a commitment to democracy will know that Sierra Leone is that. This is why in 2020, our president finally repealed criminal libel. And since 2018, we have continued to rise on the World Press Freedom Index by about 23 points. In 2022, we also convened a media viability conference, and we came together and agreed that as a country, we will set up a national fund for public interest media. And I'm very proud that last year, we finally launched that fund with the support of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. And it is, we believe, an example of what is possible when we come together as governments that's committed to values and principles with the media and private sector partners. I also must add that in Sierra Leone, we proudly provide a national subvention to the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, which is the independent arm of the coalition of all journalists in the country, and allow them to operate fairly. We're in the process of also passing additional progressive reforms. We'll have a data protection law this year. We're strengthening our freedom of information law, which is already rated one of the best on our continent. And our president is the current chair of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of States. And his commitments in his agenda is to include the fight against information pollution and misinformation in a subcontinent that you'll agree with me needs it probably more than most. But I should close by saying that in the midst of all these commitments that we have and our support, it is clear that this convening is critical. We need additional support. We need the right kinds of partnerships. We need the right coalitions to be able to build on the progress and the commitment that we have. Because as has already been pointed out, the threat that we face sometimes are beyond our capabilities, especially for a country like Sierra Leone. And it is these kinds of partnership that will help us to be able to tackle the threats together. I thank you, and we remain committed to this process.
Thank you, Minister, and we couldn't agree more. Next, Minister Azopardi, Minister for European Funds and the Implementation of Electoral Programme in Malta.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, it is an honor to be here this afternoon, and thank you, Minister Barrot, for your kind invitation. Malta stands at the forefront of international efforts to foster a secure, inclusive and resilient digital environment, one that upholds human rights, democratic values and the rule of law. First, allow me to express Malta's sincere gratitude to the French authorities for their outstanding leadership in hosting the Paris AI Summit earlier this year. We also commend the governments of France and Ghana, as well as the International Fund for Public Interest Media and the Forum on Information and Democracy for placing the spotlight on information integrity and responsible digital innovation at the Paris Peace Forum. Your commitment to advancing global dialogue and cooperation on these critical issues is deeply appreciated. Over the past year, Malta has actively contributed to shaping global digital governance. We reaffirm our support for the United Nations Global Digital Compact, which aims to create an open, secure, and inclusive digital future for all. Malta emphasizes the need for shared global principles, including bridging digital divides and defending human rights online to foster trust in the information space through multilateral cooperation. As chair in office of the OSCE, Malta convened the 2024 Media Freedom Conference in Vienna, focusing on strengthening media freedom for resilient democracies in the digital age. We address challenges such as journalist safety, access to information, and the fight against disinformation. At the OSCE Ministerial Council, Malta led discussions on protecting journalists from physical, financial, and psychological threats and advocated for the implementation of the EU anti-SLAPP legislation and the curtailment of negative political rhetoric. Under our current presidency of the Council of Europe, Malta hosted the high-level conference on building democratic resilience to disinformation. This event brought together government, civil society, and technology leaders to develop rights-based strategies for countering disinformation, promoting media literacy, and fostering transparent, pluralistic media environments. We also launched the Resist project, strengthening societal resilience to disinformation in Europe, grounded in the Reykjavik principles for democracy. Malta recognizes that artificial intelligence presents both opportunities and risks. We participated in the Paris AI Summit, co-signing the statement on inclusive and sustainable artificial intelligence for people and the planet. Malta's commitment to AI policy is built on transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. We support the creation of global norms and frameworks to prevent weaponization of digital technologies while leveraging their potential for the common good. Finally, Malta advocates for a coordinated approach, global approach to AI governance. We welcome the UN Secretary General's proposal for an international AI advisory panel and the UN-led global dialogue on AI governance, ensuring that innovation remains human-centric, ethical, and beneficial to all. In conclusion, Malta is not just a participant, but a proactive contributor to the global conversation on information integrity, media freedom, and responsible digital innovation. It is therefore with great pride that Malta endorses the Paris Declaration on multilateral action for information integrity and independent media. We remain committed to balancing innovation with ethics and societal benefit and to building a digital future that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the ministers present for their remarks and commitments. The time for our heads of state to speak is actually approaching, and so I'm going to have to ask our other speakers who will follow now to cut their remarks, preferably to a minute or 90 seconds at most. I might be forced to interrupt, and I apologize in advance, but I'd like to give the floor to Under-Secretary Lind, Under-Secretary of Global Affairs for Estonia.
And thank you very much. I will try to be very concise. Estonia fully understands the responsibility, the international responsibility that comes with our second ranking both in the World Press Freedom Index and also in the Internet Freedom Index. And therefore, let me just emphasize the 3 points today on protection, partnerships, and principles. So we find that protecting journalists is the core to also protecting the media freedom, and therefore we are providing emergency visas and safe refuge to journalists at risks. So we know that if we stop defending journalists, we risk losing the very foundation of a free society. So second is partnerships. We are sure that no government can or should tackle global challenges alone, and to uphold accountability and end impunity for crimes against journalists, we must cooperate across governments. Therefore, Estonia chaired from 2023 to 2025 July the Media Freedom Coalition and is currently chairing the Freedom Online Coalition to bring these topics together between governments and all other stakeholders. And then the third is the principles. So in today's multipolar world, we need to protect our values and principles. And when we defend journalists, we defend the truth itself, what has been said also here today. And the collapse of truth always comes before the collapse of democracy. So therefore, we are doing these things also in both of these coalitions, and we'll take all of these topics up also during our upcoming membership in the UN Human Rights Council. So I hope it was concise enough.
It was. Thank you so much. I'd like to give the floor to State Secretary Matusic, State Secretary for Political Affairs of Croatia.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, dear friends. Media freedom remains one of the issues central to democratic values. Together with the freedom of expression, it is one of the key elements of societal progress. Although digital technology has greatly improved our daily lives, it is simultaneously creating new threats ranging from online attacks against journalists to orchestrated online disinformation campaigns and dissemination of news with no public accountability. During the recent years, we have witnessed accelerated or even galloping spread of misinformation, powerful, cheap, and often economically feasible means of manipulation, which is especially emphasized in the social media-dominated environment. In order to combat these trends, Croatia's Ministry of Culture and Media and the Agency for Electronic Media have recently launched two important platforms, the Central National Platform for Fact-Checking and the Platform for the Public Disclosure of Data on Media Ownership and Financing. In addition to that, I'm pleased to emphasize that Croatia is signatory to various international treaties and recommendations on the freedom of expression and media freedom. We are continuously improving our normative framework to ensure the highest standards for all media operating in Croatia. Without safeguards for the safety of journalists, there can be no free media. Without free media, human rights and democracy are in peril. No community, country, or region can prosper if media freedom is denied. We have a collective responsibility and moral duty to preserve the freedom of media. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to give the floor to Deputy State Secretary Gerber from the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as previous speakers have pointed out, independent media is under unprecedented pressure. This is why Switzerland wholeheartedly supports the International Fund for Public Interest Media and is also a signatory state of the Forum on Information and Democracy. The International Fund provides a critical and flexible funding to media outlets, helping them build sustainable business model, safeguard their independence and survival, hold authorities accountable, and strengthen democratic governance more generally. Our support fully aligns with the Paris Declaration on multilateral action for information integrity and independence, which is the reason why Switzerland wholeheartedly supports this declaration and has endorsed it. Switzerland is proud to be an early partner of the International Fund, having contributed 2.5 million Swiss francs for the period 22 to 24, and has recently renewed its commitment for the period 25 to 28 in the amount of 2 million Swiss francs. Together with the International Fund, the Forum on Information and Democracy, and other partners, we can and we must build a media ecosystem that not only survives but thrives, informing, empowering, and inspiring societies towards a transparent, inclusive, and democratic future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your support. I'll give the floor to Ambassador Dockendorf, Ambassador for Cybersecurity and Digitalization of Luxembourg.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Luxembourg adopts the Paris Declaration, and we'd like to thank France for its commitment, and we are very proud to be part of the advisory committee of the Forum on Information and Democracy with France, Chile, Armenia, and Ukraine. We will be subsiding the forum at 25,000 euros, and we'll also be supporting the IFPM. We'll support all the agreements that have been mentioned by the other participants and have implemented and adopted a plan for protection of journalists.
Because I think it's important that we exchange these ideas as well, because our planet, as we know, is on fire. And fascism is back. It's not at the gates, but it's in the very halls of power, aided by the help of tech giants and generative AI. All our collective problems are made worse by our current information disorder. Generative AI is undermining the economic viability of independent media, the cognitive abilities of its users, and the human rights of groups and individuals in situations of vulnerability. It devours gargantuan quantities of energy, water, and public funding, and millions of data workers who train the LLMs work in inhumane conditions. Even more than that, some tech companies support the authoritarian pushback against European or international regulation. We democratic governments must work in the public interest, informed by pluralistic and independent media that hold politicians and economic power to account without having to worry about intimidation, repression, or bankruptcy. We'll hold the line together.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I'm now pleased to introduce Ambassador Tressler, Director of Multilateral Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Chile.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. In times of democratic crisis and digital technologies, Chile has strengthened its commitment to multilateral initiatives that reinforce the guarantee of right associated with information. In fact, Chile has played an active role in the creation of OECD Missing and Disinformation Working Group, or HUB, 2022, the organization of World Press Freedom Day, Press for the Planet 2024, and the signing of the Global Initiative for Climate Change Information Integrity. Of particular note is the event that Chile organized together with Brazil and Spain for a new edition of the high-level meeting in defense of democracy combating extremists. It's important to note that during this panel, one of the key issue that was pointed by all the head of states that participated was the misinformation problem and as an issue that could endanger democracy. In line with this agenda, today, within the framework of this conference, Chile confirms its interest in joining the new advisory committee of the Forum on Information and Democracy. We know that this space is a unique opportunity to strengthen multilateral action by states committed to defending the integrity of information and independent media, democracy, and peace. We therefore pledge our experience and technical support to the new advisory committee with a view of modernizing governance and ensuring the long life of the Forum on Information and Democracy, all this in pursuit of safeguarding free, pluralistic, reliable information throughout the world. Also, it's important to note, and I want to finish with two phrases, one by Francis Bacon that says information is power, and the other one by Albert Camus that said a free press can be good or bad, but without freedom, the press will never be anything but bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like to now introduce Secretary of State Niculescu, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania.
Mesdames et Messieurs le Ministre.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Minister, I would like to first thank you for your invitation and for this very interesting discussion. As you know, in Romania, we have had a lot of experience, direct experience in this matter, because during our last presidential elections, we have been the victims of the impact of disinformation and fake news, as the minister from France said. Democracy is in danger, and the very nature of our democracy was attacked through a campaign in social media that promoted ideas and people that were not very well known through the Russian interference. The democratic institutions have reacted. There was maybe a brutal reaction, that's what it looked like, but we were able to preserve our democratic values. And the decision that we have taken have shown us many things. First, how easy it was to implement such a campaign in our societies, but also that it is important to share what we have learned with others. And we have worked with Moldova for the elections that happened afterwards. And also we have become more and more aware of the necessity to have pluralistic media. And so if you have elections, you can contact us beforehand, because we have some experience in this matter. Thank you. And thank you for France for the report.
Thank you so much. Next, Deputy Director General Jäger from the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. First, I would like to thank all organizers for your leadership and for invitation to this event. On behalf of the EU, I can tell that the EU is fully committed to support media freedom and pluralism inside and outside the EU. And the European Commission is investing really actively to support independent voices in the EU and around the world, because safeguarding citizens' access to independent and reliable information is more relevant than ever, as many of you said. That is why our President von der Leyen has just announced a new media resilience program, and it will step up Europe's support to independent journalism and media literacy. And I would also like to reassure you that the European Commission is acting on Digital Service Act, because as you have seen, the Commission preliminary found TikTok and Meta in breach of their transparency obligation under the Digital Service Law. And as our president said, our democracies depend on trust. That means platforms must empower users, respect their rights, and open their system to scrutiny. The DSA makes this a duty and not a choice. Let me just finish that globally we deliver holistic support to local media, from core funding to legal support and advocacy in more than 60 million per year. Moreover, we support journalists as a human rights defenders, and this is extremely important through our program Protect Defenders. And just last year, we saved with our support more than 940 individual journalists at risk to get all our assistance. I would really like to thank organizers for their valuable support and contribution to Team Europe Democracy Initiative and for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce Mr. De Castro, the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Brazilian Embassy in Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brazil is honored to participate in this high-level conference and congratulates France and Ghana and all partners for their leadership in advancing the global agenda on information integrity and independent media. Under its G20 presidency, Brazil placed information integrity at the center of the digital economy agenda for the first time in the G20, promoting commitments on media literacy, independent journalism, and the ethical use of artificial intelligence. Within the United Nations, Brazil promoted the inclusion of as we understand that matters related to cybersecurity fall outside the scope of the partnership, and that this paragraph is not fully aligned with the United Nations Global Digital Compact. Brazil remains strongly committed to working collectively to ensure that digital transformation strengthens democracy, transparency, and human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. With my apologies, I'd like to now hand the floor to Ambassador Redondo, the Ambassador of Spain to France.
Merci, Ministre Barrot, Ministre.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear ministers, congratulations for organizing this event. This international conference at high level on information integrity is in line with the commitment of Spain when it comes to responsible governance and transparent governance. We all live in a period where information is transferred at high-level speeds, and we have to renew our efforts in order to defend the integrity of information as a pillar of democracy and to underline the role of independent media. Transparency and access to true information is not only a pillar of democracy, but also essential ingredients for our society to trust in the institutions. And the action plan of Spain for democracy in 2024 defends the strengthening of independent media and right to information. A law in March 2023 also strengthened the guarantees for whistleblowers in order to guarantee integrity and responsibility that is at the base of independent reporting. Since 2024, Spain co-chairs the Alliance for Open Government, and we have hosted the 9th Global Summit of this alliance. The President of the government has also highlighted the importance to act together because we need to fight towards open democracy altogether. Spain continues to take concrete measures in order to promote integrity, transparency, and open government. That's why Spain is funding the fund through a funding of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Spain would like to renew its trust in the governance of the fund, and Spain will continue to work with this fund, its partners, and all the countries that have shared and common values. Our renewed commitment comes through the signing of the declaration of this conference that highlights the importance of multilateral action for integrity of information and freedom of media. Thank you.
So much, Ambassador. I'm afraid we have to conclude the roundtable segment now, as our heads of state will be arriving shortly. I want to apologize to the representation from Australia, Poland, Lithuania, the Netherlands, the OECD, New Zealand, Denmark, Iceland, the UK, and Lebanon. We do welcome your written remarks. We will be able to incorporate them into the summary of the session and the press release. Now we will be actually changing some of the seating in order to accommodate the new speakers. There'll just be 4 or 5 seats that will be adjusted, but if you could remain seated unless you're asked to move, that would be terrific. And we'll stop the live stream for 2 minutes and recommence shortly. Thank you. For those joining us, I'm Nishant Lalwani. I'm the CEO of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'd like to welcome His Excellency President Macron of the French Republic, His Excellency President Mahama of the Republic of Ghana, Her Excellency President Sandu of the Republic of Moldova, His Excellency Prime Minister Rama of the Republic of Albania, and His Excellency Prime Minister Pashinyan of the Republic of Armenia. Thank you for joining us. As we've highlighted in our previous segment, and as Maria Ressa discussed in her opening remarks, information integrity is the mother of all battles. We can only solve this problem collectively, and I'm honored to welcome these 5 heads of state and government who have been global leaders in this battle. We'll hear first from His Excellency Prime Minister Pashinyan of the Republic of Armenia.
Thank you very much. Dear President Emmanuel Macron, dear President John Dramani Mahama, dear President Maia Sandu, dear Prime Minister Edi Rama, Madam Commissioner, dear friends, allow me first to express my sincere gratitude to the International Fund for Public Interest Media and the Forum on Information and Democracy for jointly organizing this important conference, and to France and other partners for their invaluable support. It is an honor to address this conference at a time when the integrity of information space and the independence of the media are being tested as never before. These are not merely technical or sectoral challenges. These are foundational issues that strike at the very heart of democracy, peace, and sustainable development. For me, as a former journalist, this topic is of particular interest. For Armenia, as for every democracy, the promotion of pluralistic, transparent, and independent media is essential. The governments should create unnecessary conditions to ensure the real independence of media. But in the evolving times when we are living in, we need to ensure the independence of media not only from governments. With the growing tendencies of foreign information manipulation and interference, it is becoming a matter of national security to protect independence of media also from others. And this brings to the very roots of media and its nature. What is media about and what should be the cause of media? I do believe that the role of media is to serve the public cause in its different dimensions, starting from keeping governments accountable to fight against corruption and push for reforms. It is worth emphasizing that after the Velvet Revolution of 2018, Armenia has demonstrated tangible progress across all reputable international indexes related to press freedom. According to the World Press Freedom Index, from 2019 to 2024, Armenia advanced from 88th to 34th place among 180 countries in terms of freedom of media. We continue to strengthen our media environment and uphold journalistic integrity as an essential public good, recognizing that democracy is not a final destination, but a continuous struggle to protect and strengthen the principles upon which it stands. At the same time, we must recognize the gravity of today's challenges. Hybrid threats, exponential growth of artificial intelligence, the blurring of the boundaries between truth and falsehood, the weaponization of disinformation. These threats are not abstracts, they are real, immediate, and global. They challenge the foundations of democratic governments, public trust, polarized societies, and weaken democratic institutions from within. The current information landscape, with its unprecedented speed and scale, requires a renewed commitment from all of us. Artificial intelligence evolves and the manipulation of content becomes more and more sophisticated. And our collective efforts must focus on defending the truth, protecting independent journalism, and building societies that are informed and not misled. Foreign information manipulation and interference is a growing security concern across the world. We believe that addressing these threats requires genuine cooperation among like-minded states that share core values of human rights, democracy, and rule of law, as mutual commitment to a rules-based international order. In this context, we believe that fostering resilience to information manipulation must begin with education, because today the development of technologies totally changes the concept of traditional media. Each of us having a smartphone in our hands has a chance to create media. And this comes to highlight the importance of media literacy of every individual. We need education that on the cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral levels promotes such values as non-discrimination, respect for diversity, and the rights of other peoples regardless of their ethnic or religious belonging. At the same time, it is education that, being a strong tool for bringing up the young generation, can be used for the wrong purposes. We must also promote genuine dialogue between nations, between communities, between generations. A dialogue that is inclusive, fact-based, and grounded in mutual respect. In a world where so many conversations risk becoming parallel monologues, we need a dialogue for the improvement of which no limits can so far be seen. And here, Armenia is ready and willing to contribute to this collective effort. We reaffirm our unwavering commitment to defending free and independent media, to protecting the digital space, and together with all our international partners to promote a global information space rooted in truth, transparency, and respect. Recognizing the importance of the healthy information ecosystems in every part of the world, Armenia plans also to join the International Fund for Public Interest Media as a focus region state member. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation to the organizers and participants of this important conference for their dedication to advancing the cause of truth, transparency, and freedom of expression. The discussions to be held here will undoubtedly contribute to our shared understanding and collective capacity to address the complex challenges facing the global information space. I am confident that through continued dialogue, cooperation, and mutual respect, we can build resilient societies anchored in truth and democratic values. I wish the conference and all its participants productive deliberations and every success in the important work that lies ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your comments and for your announcements of support today. Next, I'd like to introduce His Excellency Prime Minister Rama of the Republic of Albania.
Your Majesty, dear friends, it's with a lot of humility that I participate in this forum to support on behalf of my country the Paris Declaration on Multilateral Action for Information Integrity and Independent Media. But unlike my dear friend, the President of Armenia, I'm not going to repeat all the things that he rightly said, but I want just to underline my own preoccupation that maybe sometimes enters in collision with the general frame of platitudes that we are witnessing a crime scene that every day is more bloody, is more destructive, and is more confusing. And this is the scene of the so-called freedom of speech. We have confused the freedom of reach with the freedom of speech, and the independent media with irresponsible media. And what once upon a time was the realm of fact-checking, the Europe that we all saw from behind the curtain as the paradise of freedom, of creativity, of independence, of everything, has become the realm of chaos. And where there is chaos, of course, there is no integrity of anything, because in its nature, chaos is just a disintegrating force. And what once upon a time was seen as a safeguard for truth and dissent, anonymity, has become ignominy. And the freedom to speak without a name has turned in a license to display any type of shameful behavior or moral decay right in the open, and with all of us continuing to look into all this just from the very legitimate, I would say, and simple angle of freedom of speech, freedom of media. I don't think that all the generations before were wrong in asking the media to be accountable in front of the truth. I don't think that all the amazing experience that was built in this country and in the big democracies of holding everyone responsible for what he or she said in the public realm, and for not publishing anything that was not checked was wrong. I don't think that telling our kids to not hide behind an anonymous face, but to face their truths and their beliefs in the open and never lie is wrong. I think these are simple things that we took for granted, and we are continuing to take for granted as far as we are allowing all this chaos to overwhelm our children and to overwhelm all of us in the name of fighting, guess what, and guess who? The politicians. This is all about fighting the politicians at the end of the day. And extorting from all angles whomever has something to give back. In my country or in our part of Europe, extortion of enterprises, extortion of business people through the so-called free expression is a daily practice. And the last thing I would say is not only the filth of our society is having a free ride in the world of our so-called free speech, but all the enemies of our society are using exactly these open channels of filth to penetrate our democracies, to penetrate our communities with their trolls, with their lies, with their fake news, and with everything you don't wish to see. And we continue to say that we are going to build walls, firewalls to protect our elections and to protect our democracy from Russians and others that are working day and night using what we have left open. A house with no doors, with no windows, with no security, with nothing. It's just a house where everyone can enter, get into the bed, treat your wife as a whore, treat yourself as a criminal, treat your kids as perverted, do whatever, and you should not open your mouth. On the contrary, you should make speeches like my friend Pashinyan, because otherwise you can be crucified. Now, I don't care. I don't care. I'm elected 4 times, so two times more than Emmanuel. So I cannot ask for more. So, but I have to share with you what is going on, what's wrong with all of you. Because when I speak and when I say these things, it's very easy to say, oh, he is an autocrat. And I have somehow a look of an autocrat. But nobody can accuse France or Germany, not yet at least, as autocracies. And the big countries of Europe should take the lead and stop this filth and stop this chaos and do something. Do something. It's crazy. We banned TikTok, and to my big surprise, the TikTok people were sensitive. I was very afraid that they would go after us, and no, they were sensitive. And we asked certain things, certain filters, and I saw that they were open. And I said, but why you don't do this? And you know the answer. Nobody asks us to do this in Europe. You know, so there are many things that we can do, you can do. I can only respond to the invitation and have the pride and the privilege to be on the right side of His Majesty. So thank you very much, and please, we have gathered in a completely unusual space to have the King of France here in a suffocating room, but at least don't suffocate each other and ourselves with speeches that are good to be given in Paris-Bercy, but not here. So say some things that are coming from the guts and not just from the need to be right and to be polite. And leave it to us, because the European Union has 27 members. 24 of them have, rightly so in my belief, the law of defamation as a penal crime. We have to fulfill the condition that defamation in Albania should be considered freedom. And we have to get it out of our penal code. And I understand, because we are dangerous. So before we may enter EU, we have to make sure that we accept defamation as freedom.
Thank you so much.
You see? Yeah, I understand. It took long, but the rest will look longer.
No, thank you. Thank you for your very candid reflections, Your Excellency. And I'm very delighted to introduce Her Excellency President Sandu of the Republic of Moldova.
Thank you. Excellencies, President Macron, President Mahama, Prime Minister Pashinyan, Prime Minister Rama, distinguished guests, it is an honor to speak here today at a forum that reminds us that peace begins with truth and that truth itself must be defended. Before the first missile struck our neighbor Ukraine, the first weapon was the lie. By the time the tanks crossed the border, the groundwork had been laid. Ukraine's very right to exist had been mocked, and every effort had been made to blur the line between the aggressor and the victim. Moldova is no stranger to Russia's information war. But since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the manipulation of truth has reached terrifying new levels. Because Moldova refused to take the side of the aggressor, the Kremlin launched a furious campaign to undermine trust in the Moldovan state, to discredit the leadership, to divide our citizens, and to frighten them with the idea that if Moldova stood with Ukraine and with Europe, it would share Ukraine's fate. That fear, the fear of war, became a powerful tool of manipulation used again and again throughout the past 3 elections. Other countries, including France, have come under attack precisely because they stand firmly in support of Ukraine and in defense of democratic values. Russia's information manipulation goes even further. It seeks to erode public support for Europe's own security and defense. It aims to convince citizens that investing in protection is provocation, that strength is escalation. While Russia runs a war economy and wages hybrid warfare against many nations, it wants European democracies disarmed politically, economically, and mentally. At our parliamentary elections last month, Russia used disinformation to undermine trust in free and fair voting and eventually capture power in Moldova. It is very clear. Russian propaganda is not a collection of random posts or noisy talk show hosts. It is a strategic operation, an orchestrated campaign by an authoritarian regime to distort democracy abroad, corrode public trust, and manipulate elections in democratic countries. It exploits every difference: language, ethnicity, geography, history, turning diversity into division, neighbors into enemies. And propaganda doesn't come alone. It is part of a wider hybrid strategy that goes far beyond disinformation. It is fueled by illegal money, and in Moldova's case, has even involved priests turned influencers spreading Kremlin propaganda in churches, but also on TikTok. Hybrid warfare, which authoritarian regimes use to undermine democracies elsewhere, mixes online manipulation with physical world actions. It is not just digital. It operates across politics, religion, and society, creating pressure on institutions and deepening distrust. For us, it became clear that defending sovereignty, our right to choose our future, means defending the integrity of our information space and those who keep it alive. Before the party I founded came to power, Moldova's media landscape was suffocating under oligarchy control. We changed that. We worked to build a media environment where facts matter, where journalists could work without fear, and where citizens could trust the information they receive. Last year, Reporters Without Borders ranked Moldova 31st in the world for press freedom, a leap of more than 50 places since we began this transformation 5 years ago. That progress was not only about freedom, it was about strength and about our national security. Because when Russian malign influence intensified, our independent media, empowered and resilient, became the first line of defense. In recent elections, investigative journalists uncovered troll farms, exposed crypto-financed disinformation networks, vote-buying schemes, and revealed how Russia's proxies try to buy influence with dirty money and lies. Their work helped citizens make informed choices and helped our democracy withstand one of the most intense hybrid attacks in our history. But this work came at a cost. Journalists have been harassed online, intimidated with threatening messages and phone calls, and targeted by cyber attacks in attempts to silence them. So today, I want to express Moldova's gratitude to all our partners who support free and independent media, including the International Fund for Public Interest Media, our host today. Moldova is proud to be among its first supporters. Your work strengthens not only journalism, but democracy itself. This support also helps media outlets survive unfair competition from Russian propaganda channels that operate with unlimited and opaque resources. Independent media in Moldova is funded transparently and legally. Russian propaganda outlets are not. That is why we strengthened our legal framework, gave our Broadcasting Council stronger tools to act, and in some cases, made difficult decisions to suspend channels that spread disinformation or glorified war. We did this not to silence opinions, but to protect citizens' right to reliable information. Even so, manipulation persists through more than 300 Russian-language TV channels that blend entertainment with propaganda, humor with hate, normalizing Russia's aggression against independent states and undermining trust in democracy. Eventually, the best antidote is regulation combined with resilience, a long-term effort helping people see manipulation for what it is. As we improved the landscape for traditional broadcasting, the battlefield shifted online. Unlike television, the digital space remains largely unregulated. Social media platforms, once a promise of freedom and transparency, have become vast theaters of manipulation. Authoritarian regimes that suppress free expression at home use these same platforms to undermine democracies abroad. They exploit the openness of our societies to spread disinformation, manipulation, while denying their own citizens that very freedom. During our 2025 parliamentary elections, Russian-linked networks used Telegram, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to flood Moldovan users with fabricated news, deepfakes, and coordinated propaganda. Troll farms operating inside Moldova generated tens of millions of views. The BBC infiltrated one such network of about 100 fake TikTok accounts. The US Digital Forensic Research Lab later found that these accounts amassed over 55 million views in a country of just 2.4 million people. One political party with almost no presence on the ground was suddenly propelled into the parliament by a campaign that existed almost entirely on TikTok. This should alarm us all. What happened in Moldova in the last 3 polls or in Romania last year can happen anywhere, in your national elections, in the next European Parliament vote. If algorithms reward outrage instead of accuracy and opacity instead of accountability, then democracies are fighting on a battlefield they do not control. against adversaries who exploit it ruthlessly. So we must ask ourselves, are we still promoting freedom of expression, or are we allowing it to be hijacked by those who seek to silence genuine voices? How do we protect liberty while curbing industrial-scale manipulation? Moldova's experience shows that we must act together to restore integrity to the information space. What is illegal offline must also be illegal online. Platforms must follow their own rules and the law. They should provide real access to data, disclose who pays for amplification, and submit to independent audits of moderation and political advertising. We must follow the money, which is not easy, but we should do that. No platform should accept political or advertising payments from sanctioned individuals or entities. If the money is dirty, it cannot be treated as business as usual. Free speech is for real people, not for armies of bots. Democracies must explicitly exclude fake or non-human entities from free speech protections, especially during elections. And because hybrid threats do not stop at the Schengen line, Europe must also grow. Enlargement is no charity, it is security. By integrating the democracies that stand on the front line, Europe becomes larger, stronger, and more resilient, able to defend its democracies, its citizens, and its way of life. Finally, Europe's democracy shield must deliver concrete tools to protect democratic debate from manipulation and illicit influence, because defending democracy cannot wait for the next crisis. To defend democracy, Europe must act as one, big, strong, and united to resist hostile powers seeking to divide us. Dear friends, peace cannot survive without information integrity, and democracies cannot survive without those who protect it, journalists, citizens, and leaders alike. Moldova is deeply grateful for France's leadership and its steadfast support in helping us withstand Russian hybrid attacks and advance on our path towards EU membership. Together, we defend not only our nations, but the very idea of a free and united Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for those powerful comments. We'll next hear from His Excellency President Mahama of the Republic of Ghana.
Yeah, thank you very much. Your Excellency, President of the French Republic, Your Excellencies, President of Moldova, Albania, and Armenia, distinguished participants. Let me, on behalf of the government and people of Ghana, express our profound appreciation to the organizers, the International Fund for Public Interest Media, the Forum on Information and Democracy, and our co-host, the Republic of France, for convening this timely and consequential meeting. To the distinguished heads of state and government, experts, civil society actors, and journalists who have enriched these discussions with your perspectives, I say a heartfelt thank you. Throughout these sessions, we've confronted one of the defining challenges of our time, and that is how to defend truth and sustain trust in an era where disinformation, manipulation, and technological disruption threaten the very foundation of our democracies itself. This gathering has reaffirmed the profound truth that information integrity is not merely a media concern. It is a matter of national security, economic stability, and democratic survival. We've heard powerful voices reminding us that access to reliable, verified information is a fundamental human right and a prerequisite for peace, justice, and sustainable development. This conference has talked not only about has not been only about talk. Tangible outcomes have emerged, including the endorsement of the Paris Declaration on Multilateral Action for Information Integrity and Independent Media, reaffirming our collective commitment to free, independent, and pluralistic information ecosystems. It has also endorsed renewed political and financial commitments to replenish the International Fund for Public Interest Media, targeting 130 million euro between 2026 and 2028 to support independent journalism worldwide. The establishment of a consultative committee to enhance coordination among states, civil society, and the Forum for Information and Democracy, and also, above all, a shared understanding that the defense of truth must now be a sustained and collective endeavor, transcending national and institutional boundaries. I'm pleased to announce that Ghana has formally decided to assume full membership of the Partnership for Information and Democracy. This decision has been officially communicated through the appropriate diplomatic channels, affirming Ghana's unwavering commitment to the principles of transparency, accountability, and open governance. Our landmark decision sends a clear message to the international community that Ghana remains steadfast in advancing the frontiers of freedom, upholding the rule of law, and serving as a nation that promotes democracy and good governance. In addition, I'm proud to declare that Ghana will become the first African country to make a financial contribution to the International Fund for Public Interest Media. This gesture reflects our conviction that independent journalism and reliable information are indispensable public goods. The time has come for all of us to translate our shared ideals into tangible action, to demonstrate genuine commitment to supporting public interest media and safeguarding the integrity of information. Together, we must work to win the global war against misinformation and disinformation. We leave this conference reminded that disinformation is not an abstract issue. It is shaping elections, it distorts public health response, it fuels conflicts, and undermines the fight against climate change. A decade after the Paris Accord, falsehood continues to erode public confidence in science and policy. If we're to build a sustainable planet, we must also make an informed public. Likewise, the dawn of artificial intelligence has transformed the information landscape. While AI offers immense opportunities for innovation, it also amplifies the risk of misinformation and economic disruption. Deep fakes, synthetic media, and algorithmic manipulation are reshaping what our societies perceive to be the truth. Our collective task must therefore be to harness AI responsibly, to promote transparency, and to ensure that technological progress strengthens rather than undermines public trust. As we close, let us be clear. Independent journalism is not a luxury, it is a public good. When journalists can hold their governments accountable, societies flourish. When truth is defended, peace is preserved. And when citizens can access reliable information, democracy endures. So the message from this conference is unmistakable, that the world must invest in truth as deliberately as it invests in infrastructure, in energy or defense. The cost of inaction will be far greater than the cost of those commitments. And so finally, let us leave Paris with a renewed determination to support journalists and institutions that stand for integrity and accountability, to demand transparency and ethical responsibility from digital and AI platforms, and strengthen international cooperation to protect information as a shared global asset. In the words of the late Nelson Mandela, a critical, independent, and investigative press is the lifeblood of any democracy. That conviction must guide us as we translate the outcomes of this conference into lasting global action. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for those powerful commitments and for your continental and global leadership. Finally, I'm deeply honored to introduce His Excellency President Macron of the French Republic.
Merci beaucoup et je veux remercier
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank the President and Prime Ministers for what they say, for
les ministres, ambassadrices, ambassadeurs, Madame la Commissaire, les coprésidents de l'IFPIM,
their speech. I would like to thank the co-host of IFPIM, the Forum on Information and Democracy. Ladies and gentlemen,
D'abord, je veux vraiment remercier.
First, I would like to say that I'm thankful to the Forum on Information and Democracy and the International Fund for Public Interest in Media for their work that recreates this approach. And I would like to come back to the very beginning, because everything started in 2018 through an initiative and a political process that started at the Paris Peace Forum. And it was Reporters Without Borders that launched a call to the international community to reassert the core principles of a global space for information and communication. And 12 states had signed a commitment in 2018. And when I'm saying this, I really think of Christophe Deloire, who was at the heart of this process, and he was someone who worked on this initiative on all these years. And 3 years later, in 2021, he was also at the Paris Peace Forum that the International Fund for Public Interest Media was born. It's the real actor on the ground. I would like to thank the co-president, Maria, Marc, and all the team that is doing a lot of work in order for all of this to go forward and for us to build extremely robust things. It's NGOs, state, journalists, institutional and universities that work together for this pact on information and democracy to be real on the ground. They defend independent media through a new label. In 2018, it was something very big. When you talk about truth, when leaders talk about the truth, you should be worried, because right at the beginning, you talk about truth, whose truth? And so we had to work together to have independent professionals that find the truth and that question it in a framework that guarantees independence, that truth can come out, but it can't come from the leaders, from the rulers. So it was this initiative. We want to support something, but we can't do it ourselves. And that's the strength of this coalition, and that's the DNA of the Paris Peace Forum with the multiple actors that are represented here. And these mechanisms are extremely important. They can support the public interest media and platforms, the labels that I've mentioned, and France is committed to the International Fund Public Interest Media with a contribution of 10 million euros. But everything that was said by my colleagues is very important, because we are in a crisis that is actually multiple crises. We need to be working on interest public media in many countries. It is a real fight that we have to lead for democracy to exist. But also in media that it existed, we have, and Edi Rama said it, we have a process that is a process of degeneration. And I come back to this. And we also are faced with interference, foreign interference. And that's this triple battle that we have to lead. And this collection of actors is actually enabling us to do it. In all the countries where the infrastructure is not existing, we need to build it. We need to have free independent media there. And that's one of the role of the IFPIM, of our coalition. It's also the work that Achille does. It's independent through a foundation to help the oppositions, and that is not linked to states and interference that could exist. Because we can't create free opinion and free elections if we don't have a relationship to facts, to the political offer that exists and that shouldn't be manipulated. So free media is playing this important role. But in countries such as ours, we thought that we had already done that through the republics, and that it was something that we could take for granted. Our citizens were well informed, the medias were independent through laws and through all this time that had passed. But it's not the case anymore. And it's not the case, not because of the media. It's first media anymore. And that's the problem. And it's not because we are trying to find information through these media, TikTok, X, Instagram, or others, but there is not a huge problem because these people have not selected information as media, they didn't check it as journalists would do, and also they don't have any responsibility towards the information that they send, and they're not made to send information. And that's what was idiotic about what we did, because all these platforms that are done, that exist to create advertisement, personalized advertisement, not by selling a newspaper, they sell advertisement, but that's not information. And it's not a crime, but it's not information. And so to do this, they need to collect data on people and then to sell it through consent that is not really existing to third parties that will buy it, the advertisement companies, but also they are led by a process to create excitation so that a lot of people want to see their media and then see the advertisement. And so everything that existed before has been appended because the argumentation is not as strong as emotion, and negative emotion is stronger as positive emotion. So it creates a lot more noise and facilitates the effectiveness, the financial effectiveness of the model. That's what's happening, and this is degeneration of the democracy. We've been stupid, and because we shouldn't be informed on this platform, and we see that scientists have shown that a young French person that creates TikTok account and types in Islam, after 3 contents, the third content that he'll see will be Islamist content, Salafist content. And if you go on the media, if you go to social media, you'll see right-wing media, extreme right, far-right media, very content, very fast. And so
ce ne sont plus des lieux
these places are not places where should be informed, and so we have to create democratic antibodies, as we did against with the press at the time, because we could buy the press at the time. There was no rules, no ethics for the press in the 19th century in France, so we did it for the press at the time. And so we need to control our democratic and information life through regulation, and it was said, we can't have anonymity for everybody and no responsibility. We need to have responsibility. It was in the DSA, in the Digital Service Act. We have had litigation against Google, but it takes a lot of time.
On veut la liberté, mais on veut pas.
And we're not credible. We need freedom, but not freedom for people who don't exist. That's what you said. Both fake accounts should be illegal, and if a platform doesn't guarantee that it will delete these fake accounts, it should be forbidden as well. And we need transparency on algorithm to see if there is a bias, and this should be shown. And with the Foundation Corantera, that works, whose work is very interesting to you as well, we need to have this information to challenge everything in our democracy. We don't need to go looking for an interference through inside degeneration, our system doesn't exist anymore. And so we have also a relationship to truth and information that is completely different today, and the relationship to science and scientific truth, whether it is health or climate, we have problems, and the trust levels are falling down. And so public action is not efficient anymore. Our vaccination policies for young people that are inspired by the Australian model is not going well because you have conspiracy theories being sent on the platforms. And it's a good thing that we didn't have this level of disinformation during the COVID pandemic. Also, the relationship to climate is becoming worse and worse because of fake news. And so it's difficult to act. So in our democracies, there is a vital need to put back regulation, to regulate, to have transparency, to make these fake accounts illegal, and maybe to make illegal the platforms that don't create transparency, and to be much more efficient. But we also need innovation, and to be able to have public interest actors such as IFPIM or Coalition that can offer infrastructure, free infrastructure that are guaranteed as being free, and to guarantee that we have an economic model that is viable, that we have infrastructure that guarantees that, and also independent labeling that is not the responsibility of governments, but that is done between peers to guarantee the integrity of information, but also the integrity of infrastructure that provides the information. Then interference, the last point. Foreign interference, Maia Sandu said it, and the Romanian president said it as well, where there were elections very recently, and when you have this system that doesn't have the antibodies, it can be used by all the authoritarian regime in the world very easily, and that's what's happening today. And we have two things that we thought were impossible happening at the same time: the best of unfettered capitalism and the illegitimate heir of communism. The biggest buyers of fake accounts on X are the Russian people, the Russian government, to disrupt European democracies. We're in between all of this. We have created regulation, but it doesn't work because there's too many processes happening at the same time. It's interference at crazy level. And what was done in Romania is terrifying, with a strategy to find verticals, to create fake accounts, to create fake contents, fake media on parallel medicine through religion as well, and to create candidates that use all of this through AI, social media, and information systems that are completely fake. It creates virality and adhesion in the population. We created Visionum. In France, we also created other systems, but we have to implement systems that in our democracies, but especially during the votes, can guarantee the integrity of the electoral processes. And that's why IFPIM and Foundation are very important, because it's what journalists have to do, and we need to put them back at the heart of democratic life. And so we need to abandon these platforms that accept to be paid by third parties and third countries when you have these authoritarian regimes that want to disrupt the democracies and to interfere in the democratic process. I don't want to take much more time, but we will have this ambition for regulation in Europe. It's not against innovation. I think that innovation is a good thing, and I believe in it, but I don't believe in innovation for the dark powers. And that's what's happening at the moment. And this relationship between ideology and technology has to be seen. We have technological actors that are not politically neutral. They can do it. They're CEOs. They have the right to do it, but we can't use their networks and their technologies to sell out our youth and our democracies. We will have a priority for regulation, an agenda of regulation in Europe, but also an agenda of innovation in civil society, supporting civil society. And that's why the conference on information integrity and independent media is essential, because they are the trustworthy third parties in our democracy. Thank you.